Good morning, everyone. It's truly an honor to be with all of you this morning at the Republican Jewish Coalition, a group that has stood on the front lines, standing up to anti-Semitism wherever it rears its ugly head and defending the U.S.-Israel relationship. I especially want to thank Matt Brooks, Norm Coleman, and especially George Klein, a great man, a man of courage, of conviction, and integrity, and all of the RJC leadership. Thank you for your tireless advocacy and for bringing our community together at a time when moral clarity has never been more needed. The Republican Party has always stood proudly with Israel, not just as a matter of policy, but of principle. And let me just say, thank God we finally have a president back in the White House who believes in standing with Israel like we all do. President Trump has been the single strongest force for peace in the Middle East in decades. President Trump supported Israel after Joe Biden and his listless administration tried to turn them into a pariah. President Trump worked hand in hand with Israel to strike swift and true against the radical Iranian regime, destroying their nuclear program before it could produce the unthinkable. And President Trump delivered on his promise to bring home the hostages and is finalizing a historic 20-step peace plan and normalization agreements that will secure peace for Israel and the Middle East for decades to come. But we know the fight is not over, because there are still deceased hostages remaining in captivity, including 2 Americans, Omer Nutra and Ite Chen. Their families deserve closure. They deserve a proper burial, and we must not yield until they come home. Now, President Trump knows one fundamental truth. Israel is our ally. It is a symbol of what democracy can be around the world, and it is the only true democracy in the Middle East. Israel is a nation built on resilience and freedom. These are the very same values that are at the foundation of our own country. So let us be clear. Israel is not an oppressor. Israel is not committing genocide. Israel is a beacon of freedom, of hope, and opportunity, and we will always stand with our ally Israel. As chair of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on the Middle East and North Africa, I have worked tirelessly to strengthen the U.S.-Israel alliance, from advancing bipartisan legislation that ensures Israel's security, to giving the administration the tools they need to expand the Abraham Accords. We have worked to hold the United Nations accountable for its blatant double standards against Israel, and are promoting the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign against the Ayatollah and his dangerous regime in Iran. In the 118th Congress, I was proud to lead and pass the SHIP Act, which worked to cut Iran's oil trade off at the knees and hold China accountable, the biggest purchaser of Iranian petroleum. That is what is funding Hamas. That is what is funding Hezbollah and the Houthis and Iran's terror proxy network, and it is what is funding their nuclear ambitions and ballistic missiles program. It must be cut off at the source. But there is more work to be done to ensure that Iran can never again pose a threat to Israel. And sadly, as we all know, the threats facing Israel abroad are not often met with understanding or support. As President Bush said after October 7th, the world stands with Israel, but the moment they defend themselves, the world will turn. And that, sadly, is what has happened. In fact, Israel's challenges are being mirrored by a disturbing rise in anti-Semitism here at home, across college campuses, synagogues, and city streets. And we've seen it. We feel it. We have witnessed that hatred that many thought belonged to another era. Jewish students have been harassed, intimidated, physically threatened, and assaulted simply for being Jewish or for daring to support Israel's very right to exist. Everybody decries the one Jewish state in the world. Interestingly, none of those people say one word about Arab states. Why is it they are so outraged about the thought of a Jewish state? Because it is rooted in anti-Semitism. Let us be clear, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Chanting from the river to the sea or globalize the intifada is not free speech. It is bigotry. It is discrimination. It is calling for the eradication of Israel and the Jewish people, and it is an assault on their freedoms and our freedoms as Americans. And sadly, it has been normalized. It has been tolerated. It has been embraced by the far left, by the Democratic leaders who are too afraid of their base or too politically compromised. Call it whatever it is. Chuck Schumer likes to say he is Shomer. Let's be clear. Chuck Schumer is a shanda. He's a disgrace. Even now, the leading candidate for mayor of New York City, home to the largest Jewish population outside of Israel, is basically running on a pro-Hamas platform. Let's call it what it is. When you refuse to denounce globalize the intifada, when you say that you will arrest the duly elected leader of the state of Israel if he comes to New York, but you don't have an opinion on whether Hamas, a terrorist organization designated by the United States, should lay down its arms, you are unqualified to be the mayor of the city of New York. When you are raising money just 3 weeks ago for UNRWA, an organization that the United States Congress has defunded precisely because of its role in promoting anti-Semitism, in teaching Palestinian students to hate Jews and to want to kill Jews, and because of its role in October 7th, in which they helped fund and train and engaged in the killing of Jews and Americans and New Yorkers. And this disgraceful individual raised money for them just a few weeks ago. And yet we have sitting elected officials like Hakeem Jeffries endorsing him to be the mayor of New York City. Zohran Mamdani has given ample opportunity, and yet he still will not denounce Hamas. He wrongly labels Israel an apartheid state, and he traffics in the same anti-Israel propaganda that has been fueling violence against Jewish people in New York and across the country. And I was proud to stand with Speaker Johnson on the steps of Columbia and call out those students for exactly what they are, an abomination to our country. But sadly, this isn't just the fringe anymore. This is now the mainstream within the Democratic Party, and we must call it out. And as many of my colleagues have said, we must call it out on the right as well. We cannot tolerate anti-Semitism anywhere that it rears its ugly head. But if you look at the folks endorsing them, Governor Hochul, Leader Jeffries, AOC, and the squad. We see it with these folks. We see it on the college campuses. We're seeing it in state legislatures. We've seen it in the anti-Semitic boycott, divest, sanction movements. And yet now we're on the brink of electing a Marxist socialist who is openly anti-Semitic as mayor of New York City. The acceptance by many of my Democratic colleagues of this hatred is complicit and damaging to Jewish people's safety in our country. This gross rise in normalization of anti-Semitism is one of the reasons why I introduced the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, requiring the Department of Education to adopt the IRA working definition of anti-Semitism when investigating and enforcing civil rights law and enforcing and upholding Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. I'm also advancing the Countering Hate Against Israel Act, pushing back on those who use taxpayer dollars to delegitimize the Jewish state, and the IGO Anti-Boycott Act to fight back against the insidious BDS movement promoted by the United Nations. In President Trump's first term, he adopted legislation to hold countries to account that try to coerce and force U.S. companies to engage in the BDS movement. I am simply seeking to expand that definition to include the United Nations and hold that institution accountable for its anti-Israel, anti-U.S., anti-Jewish bigotry and hatred. And I've been receiving pushback for doing that from those on the right, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Who knew that Marjorie Taylor Greene was such a fan of the United Nations? It's pathetic, it's embarrassing, and we must pass that legislation immediately. And folks, we will ensure that the Department of Education finally holds colleges accountable for the explosion of anti-Semitism on campuses since October 7th. This moment demands courage. Anti-Semitism threatens not just the Jewish community, but the moral fabric of our nation. Because when radicals chant from the river to the sea, they are not calling for peace, they are calling for the eradication of the Jewish state. It's not a political slogan, it's a genocidal one. The genocide in the Middle East are those that seek to eradicate the state of Israel. And the reason we know that is because none of those free Palestine people, none of those ceasefire now people had anything to say when President Trump negotiated that ceasefire and when the Palestinians were being slaughtered by Hamas in the streets when Israel moved back from behind the line. They said nothing. Because it was never about freeing Palestine, it was about ending the Jewish state. And we must remain vigilant against it. And yet many Democrats in Washington, Albany, and New York City still can't bring themselves to say one simple truth. Hamas is the face of evil, and Israel has every right to defend itself. And the United States must stand with Israel without hesitation or apology. That is what leadership looks like. That is what the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln and Reagan and Trump, is delivering once again. We are the party that stands up for Israel's right to exist, for America's alliance with the Jewish people, and for the fundamental truth that good and evil are not morally equivalent. In a world filled with moral confusion, we choose clarity. In a time of weakness, we choose strength. And in the face of hatred, we choose courage. As Psalm says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May those who love you be secure. That's what we're fighting for. Security, freedom, and peace for Israel, for the Jewish people, and for the United States of America. So let each of us here recommit ourselves to standing with Israel, to combating anti-Semitism, and to ensure that America remains a steadfast ally and defender of the Jewish people. Because it's not only the right thing to do, it is the moral thing to do. Thank you. God bless you. God bless Israel. And may God bless the United States of America.